On this Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, Brandon Clarke is out for the remainder of the season for the Memphis Grizzlies due to an injury. We're going to lead off with that. We're going to talk about Grizzlies Clippers this past Friday night, and we're going to predict the seed of the Memphis Grizzlies when the regular season dust settles. 11 games to go. Let's lock in here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello out there. My name is Joe Mullinax, and I am your host for this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, this Monday edition of the podcast. Thank you so much for being with me wherever you're checking out the show. Flying solo today. Life happens to Michael Cole, getting caught up on some things during this little bit of a breather in the Grizzlies schedule. I am happy to fill in for my partner, and I'm happy to be here with you for the next 30 minutes or so talking Memphis Grizzlies basketball. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Check us out anywhere you get podcasts. Make the Michael and I an everyday part of your Memphis Grizzlies and NBA at large content consumption. You can also check out our Locked On Daily newsletter. It is free each and every day. LockedOnDaily.com. Grizzlies words from me. Analysis of the league at large, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. So make sure you're checking out LockedOnDaily.com. I wish we had a better topic to start with today, right? You're starting the week. Folks are either going on spring break or getting ready to go on spring break, a little bit of a breather for the end of the school year. Summer officially getting underway. It's supposed to be good vibes, right? The Memphis Grizzlies do not currently have good vibes, whether it's in the injury report or whether it's on the court. We're going to talk about both of those scenarios here momentarily, but we're going to lead off with injury report news. This is from, of course, our very own DeMichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. This is on X at DeMichael C. Brandon Clarke does a lot of the small things that add up to a major impact. This is a big loss for Memphis. And in his article that he wrote about the injury, the Memphis Grizzlies announced that Brandon Clarke will miss the remainder of the 2024-2025 season after suffering a high-grade PCL sprain in his right knee. Clarke, who had appeared in 64 games this season, has been one of the Grizzlies' best interior players. His defensive versatility and rim-running ability on offense led to averages of 8.3 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 62.1% shooting from the field. This is a massive loss for the Memphis Grizzlies. And DeMichael writes about it in the article about Clarke finishing games with Jaren Jackson Jr., his switch ability defensively. That is really where they're going to miss him more than anywhere. Because of what Clarke is capable of, I talk about it all the time. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me say on numerous occasions, I hate predictability. That is one of the best arguments against playing Zach Edey, and hopefully Michael and I will be back together tomorrow, and he and I can talk a little more about Zach Edey getting increased opportunity with Clarke out. But one of the things I don't like about Edey is he has to play drop coverage. If you put him into switches, he's going to be hunted all game long. And you can argue in drop coverage, they're going to hunt for Edey as well, and they do that. But if the floater or the mid-range jumper is the goal, while NBA players are capable of hitting that shot, you hear all the time in this efficiency-driven NBA, the mid-range jumper or the floater is what opposing defenses want teams to take. So letting Edey have that drop coverage opportunity and making them shoot those longer range twos, not the most ideal situation. We've seen Jonas Valanciunas struggle with it. We've seen Steven Adams struggle with it in the past. But that's what you're going to have to do to put Edey in the best position to be successful. He is not Brandon Clarke. He is 8 inches taller than Brandon Clarke. Probably outweighs him by about 50 pounds, if not more. Edey is a different big. He's a different center. You're going to have to use him differently. It's going to mean more Jaren at the 5 more than likely, and that comes with mixed results. Jaren Jackson Jr. is not the best rebounder. He has been struggling of late. We'll talk more about that in the next segment. His very paltry numbers against the Los Angeles Clippers. Jaren has not been Jaren lately. And when that is the reality that you're facing, putting him in spots where he's less comfortable, like the center position, how much is that going to help him, especially defensively? Not exactly sure what the answer is. Santi Aldama has been the Grizzlies' fourth best player all season long. Increased opportunity for Santi, not the worst thing in the world. He should be playing starters minutes at this stage of the game. But is he going to be able to hang and defend and be the guy that Clarke was in his own way? And what do I mean by that? I mean, can Santi be malleable? Can Santi find versatility on both ends of the floor? Can he be switchable? He has a frame to do it. He has gotten better in terms of his lateral quickness, his understanding of defensive movement. He has not been as atrocious in switches onto perimeter wing types as he has been in the past. That's a credit to Santi. It's one of the reasons he's having one of his best seasons yet. But can he do that on a consistent night in, night out basis without the support of Brandon Clarke, who does it better than him? If Santi's having a down night, Clarke can take on those roles. Santi's a better offensive weapon. I'm not worried about his offensive versatility. Can Santi fill that void defensively? Because it's going to come down to Edey and Santi first and foremost, how those guys get in the mix. And then, of course, you have reserve bigs like Jay Huff. Jay Huff scored the ball well against the Clippers, didn't do much else. You got guys like Marvin Bagley, who are just occupying space on the bench for the most part since he has arrived in Memphis. He played cleanup duty the last minute or so of the fourth quarter against the Clippers on Friday. Are you going to give him an actual chance to show what he can do? Because again, he's a 6'11" big. He's a legitimate center. He allows for you to keep Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4. If Bagley is a liability, if he is not capable of giving you what you need him to give as a rebounder, as a defender, then sure, stick with Jay Huff. But you're going to have to start playing these guys. And the answer is not playing John Conchar at the small ball 4. Please, please, please stop arguing for playing John Conchar. 13 minutes against the Clippers, 0 points, 2 rebounds, 1 steal, a turnover. He was +7. I'll give him that. He played alongside Edey. He and Edey were ironically 2 of the better guys in terms of individual game plus minus, which is a very flawed stat. But at least he was productive. I'll give Conchar that. But it shouldn't be small ball John Conchar at the 4 because he's a good rebounder. You have bodies. You have to let them play. And oh no, what's the worst that could happen? You lose? Guess what's happening right now? You're losing. You're on a 3-game losing streak. You are a team that looks like they are floundering going into the end of this season. You know what's happened in the month of March, including February 28th? So March in a day, 4-game losing streak, 4-game winning streak, lost 4 of their last 5. The Memphis Grizzlies have lost 8. They are 5-8 in their last 13 games. And we'll talk about the standings and predicting where we think Memphis will fall seeding-wise later on in the show. That question gets a lot harder to answer with Brandon Clarke out, because Brandon Clarke provides so much for you in terms of his versatility defensively, his role offensively in the dunker spot. He has a level of physicality that enables Memphis to do things differently. And without him, you are going to have to put Santi Aldama in tougher spots defensively. You're going to have to count on him there. You're going to have to let Zach Edey play through whatever his issues are. Zach Edey looked good against the Clippers in the first half. Then the Clippers made their adjustment. We'll talk more about this. And they blew the doors off the Grizzlies in the third quarter. But Edey was doing good things. Are you able to be malleable with what you do? If you are a system coach who is incapable of making the most of what your players are capable of, then we have larger issues. Brandon Clarke is no longer an option, Coach Jenkins. You don't have him on the bench, at least not in uniform. Might be in street clothes, watching with his teammates. And that's a huge loss. If Santi has been the 4th best Grizzlies player this year, I'd say Clarke has been 5th. So how do you respond to that? You have to trust Zach Edey more, at least giving him opportunity to play through things. You're going to have to use Santi Aldama like a starter. And you're going to have to see what you can get from Jay Huff and Marvin Bagley if you can't trust Gigi Jackson, which they clearly don't right now because he's in the G League with the Grizzlies in this spot with Clarke out. Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. How are you feeling? Obviously, terrible for Brandon. Didn't talk about that as much. First and foremost, Clarke has been a part of this Ja Morant era literally since the beginning, right? Ja was picked second. Clarke was picked later in that draft in 2019. We'll talk down the road about the ramifications in the offseason to this as well, because Clarke was really the tradable contract that you had. So what does this do to summer plans? We'll talk about, I'm sure, when things get a little bit slowed down on the basketball side. But first and foremost, we wish Brandon well. We wish him a speedy recovery. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to talk about the game against the Clippers on Friday night, a tale of two halves, a pretty solid showing for Memphis in the first, and then a complete collapse in the second half. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is pretty easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. It's a lot of money on chicken wings and Taco Bell, I can tell you that. Now, I budget smarter and save more. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever as well. My wife loves that aspect. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check finances, track spending, and plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Go check them out today. So the Memphis Grizzlies lost their third straight game on Friday night. It was against the Los Angeles Clippers, and Pete Pranica said it on the broadcast, a tale of two halves. Right, the Memphis Grizzlies looked pretty spry in the first half. Pretty impressive, to be honest with you. 2 quarters scoring 30 or more points. The defense was a little bit more locked in. The Clippers had a pretty darn good starting five. They had Norm Powell, James Harden, Chris Dunn, Kawhi Leonard, Vika Zubac, having one of his best seasons ever, if not his best season ever. Those guys were relatively locked in and healthy. And Memphis hung with them, and Memphis competed. But then in the second half, adjustments were made. You started seeing more Bogdanovich, less Chris Dunn. One of the Grizzlies' philosophies was, we're just going to let Chris Dunn shoot. We're going to leave him wide open. You can't do that to Bogdanovich, who was 4 for 5 from beyond the arc, and it opened things up for the Clippers in the second half. 36-16. The Grizzlies only scored 16 points in the third quarter. Those adjustments killed the Grizzlies. It was another cold night for Jaren Jackson Jr. 23 points on 24 shots, 9 of 24 from the field. I say this often. If Rudy Gay had put up that line back in 2012, 2011, fans would be calling for his head. I remember those days, over a decade ago now, 14 years or so ago now. That's a bad, inefficient scoring line, especially for someone that you think is going to make all NBA and Jaren Jackson Jr. You need more from him, especially with Ja Morant still out. Hopefully we get a good injury report update for tomorrow's show, and Ja is closer to returning. Maybe not against the Utah Jazz, right? Because Utah is the worst team in the NBA, not actively trying to win at this stage, or at least the worst team in the Western Conference. Maybe you get a doubtful designation for Ja on Tuesday, and he's able to go Thursday against the Thunder. But Jaren has to do more. He can't settle. 9 3-point attempts for him. He took more threes than Desmond Bane, who we'll talk more about here in a moment. Took more threes than Santi Aldama. Took more threes than Luke Kennard. Jaren has to put the ball on the feet, on the ground, on the court, and get to the basket off the dribble. Only 4 free throw attempts. That tells me that Jaren settled way too much offensively. He didn't go and attack the Clippers' interior. That's a problem. Only 2 rebounds in 35 minutes of play. If you're only going to play Zach Edey 17 minutes off the bench, which is exactly what happened, your leading rebounder being Desmond Bane in the starting group, him and Santi Aldama, in fairness, were tied. Jaren was the least rebounding player in the entire starting group. And I'm not the guy that will get in the comments or go on a Spaces and say that Jaren Jackson Jr. is terrible because he doesn't rebound. I've said in the past, I don't care as much about that, and that is true. But there's a difference between him only getting 5 or 6 rebounds, which again, I still don't. That's fine with me. Or getting 2, right? The difference is 3 or 4 rebounds, 3 or 4 possessions, 3 or 4 clearances of the glass on defense, a couple extra shot attempts on offense. Those add up. And for Jaren to not be engaged in that space, he had no offensive rebounds. Again, that tells me he was not around the rim nearly enough. He's 6'11", 245, especially with the Clippers going smaller. Kawhi was essentially the power forward. Leonard had his way with Jaren. He was outplayed by the glove. Or not the glove, the claw, excuse me. Scottie Pippen Jr. had a good game. You know, that was an adjustment that DeMichael and I talked about going into the contest on Friday's show. Scottie Pippen Jr. should be a starter. Luke should go to the bench. And to be honest with you, both guys played well, right? Scottie Pippen Jr. did some really good things. Scored the ball. He was 3 for 4 from beyond the arc. 5 assists to 2 turnovers. That's not a terrible ratio. You'd like to be a little bit more assist to turnover, but again, that's better than what he's done in the past. It was a good game for Scottie Pippen Jr. Certainly can't say he was one of the reasons they lost. We talked about Luke Kennard having a good game. 3 for 5 from the field, 6 of 9 overall, 4 assists, 1 turnover. We're cooking with gas. Luke and Scottie did their job. Desmond Bane was questionable going into the contest, did not look like he was comfortable offensively. And his numbers back that up. 3 for 7. 3 for 7. Only Jalen Wells in the starting 5 took less shots, and Wells only played 15 minutes. More on that in a minute. So Dez in his 33 minutes was a warrior like he normally is. 5 rebounds, as we talked about a moment ago. 4 assists. A steal. But he also had a team worst minus 26. He was part of that extended run for the Clippers that put the game out of reach for the Grizzlies. They don't have enough firepower to withstand a 36-16 quarter like the third quarter was. And Dez wasn't able to stop it. And that tells me that he wasn't feeling right. So I'm hopeful these few days off between Friday's game against the Clippers and then hopefully a bounce back performance against the Jazz. I am optimistic that Dez is going to take advantage of those opportunities and be able to put forward a better offensive effort because the Grizzlies just need more. Again, Dez competes. 5 rebounds, 4 assists. It's not like he just didn't try, but they need more from that guy, especially with Morant out. He's the second option. He can't be the 4th leading shooter in the starting lineup. And last but not least, the rookies, right? The people talk a lot about the issues with Edey, how he struggles to catch the ball. He plays the center position in a way that the Memphis Grizzlies don't traditionally want to use the center position, right? With this motion offense and wanting spacing. Edey doesn't check all those boxes. And defensively, the way they defend, a 7'4", 290-pound guy, not moving as fleet of foot as a smaller big, sure, that makes sense. Jalen Wells has really not played well lately, right? He has really struggled as of late. And it has to be a rookie wall. We have to remember this is a guy who 2 years ago was playing Division II basketball. This is someone that being patient with a rookie, a team that says they're trying to compete for a championship, they certainly don't look like it of late. And we'll talk more about that here in a moment. But the month of March has been miserable for Jalen Wells. He is shooting 30.6% from the field. 30.6%, the worst month of his career so far. 24.6% from beyond the arc. That is a liability for the Grizzlies. He is not contributing right now. He's struggling. Is that because he's tired? Is that because he's banged up? Is that because a variety of things? I'm sure. Again, to go in 2 years from Sonoma State to starting numerous games in the National Basketball Association, that's a pretty wide jump. And it's a friendly reminder of where these Grizzlies are because the Marcus Smart experience failed so terribly in Memphis. For whatever reason may be. But Jalen Wells is being asked to do too much. He wasn't supposed to be this guy. He's an all-rookie performer. Zach Edey is almost certainly an all-rookie performer. The Grizzlies will have 2 guys on the all-rookie team, more than likely. And they are looking still, even after all of this. We'll talk more about it momentarily. They are currently one of the top 10 records in the NBA, even with everything that's transpired. They have an opportunity to get back into the hunt for the 2 seed. It's going to be tight, but they can do it. If they're going to do it, they need more out of Jalen Wells than what he's been giving of late. That was especially true in the Clippers game, but it's been true all month long. And that's going to be a major key. Hopefully, against the Utah Jazz, it can be a get-right kind of conversation. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to be discussing the current state of play in the standings as of this recording, where Memphis fits, how this can all play out for the Grizzlies, where I think they're going to wind up. Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host for this episode, Joe Mullinax. Thank you so much for being with me on this edition of the show. Not the most sunshiny rainbow episode, right? Talking about the issues with the Clippers game. And then, of course, leading off the program with the news that Brandon Clarke will miss the rest of the 2024-2025 season with that intense, pretty high grade PCL sprain in his knee. Now, the Grizzlies, as of this recording, okay, and it's always important to preface it with that. As of this recording, the Grizzlies are staring down the number 5 seed in the Western Conference. The Clippers are on their heels, only a couple of games back in the loss column. Same thing with the Warriors. Memphis is now, in terms of games back, closer to the 8 seed in the Western Conference. They're about 2.5 games. Then the 2 seed in the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets, have a 3-game advantage. So if we're just going by the numbers, dear listener, dear viewer, the Memphis Grizzlies are less likely to be the 2 seed than they have been in some time. And when you look at their upcoming schedule, it makes games like tomorrow night's contest against the Jazz much must-wins if you want to remain relevant in that conversation. Because the last game of this road trip is against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then you play the Los Angeles Lakers at home on a Saturday night. And then on Monday night, you have the Boston Celtics at home. 2 of the best teams in the NBA, especially since the trade deadline. Luka Doncic going to the Lakers, of course. And then on the second night of a home and home back-to-back, at least the Grizzlies get to sleep in their own bed, but they have the Golden State Warriors, who now have Jimmy Butler on their team. Then they're on the road. And it makes games against Miami must win. It makes games against Detroit, who is one of the better teams in the NBA, and truth be told, has been playing better than the Memphis Grizzlies in the last month or two. The Pistons, they got to try to beat them on April 5th. Then, after a couple of days, they're in Charlotte against a wounded and limping to the finish line Hornets team. That's a must-win. So the good news is they have games against the teams that are either in their periphery in terms of the standings or teams that are currently in front of them. If they can find a way to beat the Lakers, if they can find a way to beat the Warriors, they can be in the mix for tiebreakers. They have a chance to move up a little bit. It's going to be hard for them to catch the Rockets unless the Rockets collapse, because you have to remember Houston has the tiebreaker on the Grizzlies. So even if Memphis gets a 3-game jump on the Rockets and they're tied, Houston has the tiebreaker. So Memphis really has to be 4 games better than the Rockets with 11 to play for the Grizzlies. That's a tall task, assuming that Houston keeps playing as well as they have of late. So looking at the schedule here, let's say the Grizzlies go 5-6 over their last 11. That's realistic, okay? That would put them at 48 and 34. 48 and 34 if they were 5-6. That would mean that the Warriors would only need to lose, 4 more games. The Warriors the Clippers could only lose 4 more games, roughly. Timberwolves could only lose 3 more games with about 10 to go. So that put them at 7-3 in their last 10. The Timberwolves are 8-2. The Clippers are 8-2. The Warriors are 8-2. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? While it is not mathematically probable for Memphis to fall all the way to the 7 or 8 seed into the play-in, it is possible, especially when you compare how well those teams have been playing of late with the Grizzlies. So you have to find a win against a team that you're not supposed to beat. The Thunder have already clinched the Western Conference best record. They've clinched the 1 seed already. So there's a decent chance that you're not going to see OKC's best in that Thursday night game coming up later this week. if that's the case, you have to find a way to win that game. You can make an argument they need to find a way to win that game anyway. But as OKC starts putting their eye towards the postseason, you have to find a way to win that game. You have to find a way to beat Miami and Charlotte in their buildings. Two teams that are limping to the finish, that are more interested in ping pong balls in the lottery than they are the postseason. Yes, Miami is probably going to be in the play-in. It's not because they're trying to win. It's because they're 30-41 as of this recording, and the next team behind them is 6 games back. In the Eastern Conference, seeds 7 through 10 all have losing records. The only team that would be in the mix for the 10 seed as of this moment would be the Atlanta Hawks. They would be right there with the Phoenix Suns. Everybody else would be behind. So the Eastern Conference being the leastern conference this year, at least when compared to the West, that's a good thing for Memphis. They've done a good job beating up on the Eastern Conference teams. The Grizzlies are 25-19 against the West, but that tells me that they are 18-9 against the East. So let's say they win 2/3 of those Eastern Conference games that they have left on their schedule, including the Boston Celtics. So if they have Boston, Miami, Detroit, Charlotte, let's say they win 3 of those 4. They beat Charlotte, Miami, and 1 of Boston or Detroit. That's realistic. Then you pick up Utah. It's realistic. Find a way to win 1 of 3 over OKC, Lakers, Golden State. Dallas is the last game for Memphis. That should be a win. So I just gave you 6 games that realistically could be victories for the Memphis Grizzlies. And I told you earlier that 5-6 was going to be the starting point for a prediction given how they've recently played. This isn't going to surprise anybody checking out this show, but guess what the X factor to all of this is? And we'll talk more about it on tomorrow's episode. Can Ja Morant play? Because if Ja Morant's on the court 6-5, 7-4, that's possible given the schedule that's left and given teams like Dallas that are limping to the finish, as I've said a few times. Teams like Oklahoma City who may be limping along because they want to limp, because they're looking to the playoffs and they're trying to get their guys rest after putting in the work that they've put in so far this season. They have nothing left to gain in the regular season. They're not just going to shut guys down, of course, but their attention can now turn to beyond. Memphis is still very much in the here and now, and they have to take advantage of that. Is Ja Morant able to go? The Grizzlies, as presently constructed, even without Clarke, without Ja Morant, should be able to beat the Utah Jazz in Utah tomorrow night. Having him back for OKC would be gigantic. And then that puts you in those last 10 games of the regular season. How can you get to 6-4? How can you put yourself in a spot where you're in that 4 or 5 seed conversation? Memphis is only a game behind the 3 as of this recording, the Denver Nuggets. So if the Grizzlies can really put some rhythm together, in a week, we could be talking about Memphis being a game behind the 2 seed, Houston Rockets. And now you're looking at a 3-6 matchup where you're hosting a first-round series, as opposed to the current reality of having a game 1 in Los Angeles against Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and the Los Angeles Lakers. Does anybody want to see that? The Lakers probably do. I don't think the Grizzlies want that in this moment. Hit me up on X. Let me know in the comments. How are you feeling about the standings? Again, my official prediction, I think Memphis is going to be right in the 3 seed conversation. Again, they're only a game behind Denver right now. The Denver Nuggets also are kind of limping along in this moment. Same with the Lakers. The Lakers are 4-6. The Nuggets are 5-5. LeBron coming back soon should give the Lakers a spark. But the Grizzlies, again, the 2 seed is probably too far gone at this point, barring a complete and total collapse from the Rockets. If they're able to hover around 6-4, 7-3 over their last 10, Golden State, Clippers, they're not going to catch them, and Memphis will stay right in that mix. And you want to have home court advantage, at least in that first series of the postseason. Let me know on X, at Joe Mullinax. Hit me up in the comments. How do you think it's going to work out seeding-wise? I've got Memphis at 3. Maybe I'm still being too optimistic. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Tomorrow, DeMichael will be back in the mix. We will preview Grizzlies Jazz. Hopefully, we have an injury report update. We can take a look at how Ja Morant is looking, how other Grizzlies players are feeling. Obviously, Desmond Bane was on the injury report going into the game against the Clippers last week. So hopefully it's a cleaner bill of health going into the Jazz game. We'll talk about that and more, I'm sure. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make us a part of your everyday NBA Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Also, make sure you're subscribing on LockedOnDaily.com. It's a free daily newsletter, words on the Memphis Grizzlies from me, sent right to your inbox. There's no artificial intelligence generating this stuff. It is legitimate writing each and every day from me. It's one of my favorite parts of my day, writing about the Grizzlies every morning when I get up. Make sure you're going to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribing to get those words in your inbox, plus NBA analysis, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. Until tomorrow, have a good start to your week, Grizzlies fans. This is Locked On Grizzlies. Again, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and make sure you're with us tomorrow. See ya.